Teacher Academy webinar on games. So today we will focus on teacher versus the game and who is actually in control. And we have two excellent speakers, two experts on games in schools and classrooms. We have Daniela, who will introduce herself just in a moment, and then later we have Annamaria Lisotti, a Scientix ambassador, who will also, I'm sure, will introduce herself and her background. So thanks a lot for everyone for coming. If you have any questions for the experts, please write them into the chat box and we will answer them after the presentations are over. So if any questions or comments, just put them into the chat box. So now, Daniela, welcome. Hey, we can start.
Okay, super. So hi, everybody. I'm very honored to speak to you and to discuss this very passionate topic of digital games with you today. And well, I've chosen a very spooky title, Teacher versus Game. And this is what I really experienced, me being a secondary school teacher in Luxembourg. So I've been using digital games and analog games in my courses for, let's say, 3 years. And I'm also working for the Luxembourg Ministry of Education. And so I'm quite busy in getting policies in the direction of media and information literacy, and especially of digital game-based learning. So I have maybe the two hats. So let's start maybe to see the fight of the two, the game and the teacher. So, well, last week we had a poll on Facebook. About 50 of you responded to that, and we had a clear winner of that poll. We had 12% of the participants saying that the game was the real game changer, and 88% saying that it was the teacher. So we have a clear underdog position for the game, but let's see that through. Before we start talking about game changing, maybe we should be clear on the game we want to change. So I guess we're mainly working in the formal buildings system. So being a teacher, we maybe want to change the learning system, the learning game. And so first of all, I want to state that it's all about learning and how we want learning to be and how we can make that happen. So I don't know which pedagogical direction you're a fan of, but I guess most of us would agree on that learning should be active, self-paced, relevant, problem-based, social, and situated nowadays. And now it's a big question how we make that happen. That would really be a game changer. So before starting the fight in the red corner with the game and in the blue corner with the teacher, maybe we set a common ground, because if we want to go for opposites, we have to make sure that we can really compare these two. And having read and being a bit experienced in the field, I really found that there is common ground to both of them. So teacher and games are striving to achieve defined goals. And to really achieve these goals, the participants have to get active. So the players get active and the students get active too. And they have to be very careful and pay attention to what is going on in the course and in the game. And of course, they have to put in effort to solve the tasks set by the teachers, set by the game. And what's quite weird is that the increasing difficulty of the tasks in games have a highly motivating factor on the gamers, maybe less motivating in the course for the students, but okay. Both teacher and games provide feedback about the players, the students' performance, and hopefully there is tangible progress in the course and in the game. So there is really a common ground to both of them. And having said that common ground, we can start to look at the differences and on the special features. And I pretty much like these two images. So we have the fantastic world of the games and the fantastic world of the classroom. And while looking at that, we might be a bit, we might question the underdog role, but let's see. Okay, we start with the teacher. So the special superpowers or special features of the teacher in that fight would be that he's a pedagogical wizard, so he's pedagogically trained and experienced to work with the students. He's a proven social worker, being used to questions to adapt his course. He's at least level 69 in flexibility, so concerning requests and Monday morning feelings of the students, he's used to react to that. And his special superpower is really the transfer power. So he has really the power to make the transfer from an abstract mathematical problem to a real world question. And he's also very experienced in being the rule keeper in class, and he's 100% human. So, and on the other hand, in the red corner, we have the special forces of the game, and games are known to be complex systems. That means that they have rules and they have limits and they have many possibilities to offer, and the player being in the game has to get to know the system and to learn the system. And games offer very immersive worlds. That means by being really interactive multimedia tools, they really get the players immersed, which means that they forget about time, they forget about the place they're in, they forget about lunch. And that's a big effort, a big strong point for the game. A game is challenging its players, and it's adaptive to their performance in the game. As I've already said, maybe a difference between the game and the teacher is that games feel more rewarding to many people than a normal course, and they're 100% fun. So there are really special forces, and let's see, we wanted to change learning, and now we see who makes the point. So when we're talking about active learning, we have on the one hand complex systems offered by the game and the pedagogical knowledge offered by the teachers. So both have 1.0, I guess. Looking at self-paced learning, we have on the one hand the adaptive systems of games, and on the other hand the flexibility of the teacher. So I guess there's 1 point on each side. So to make learning relevant, it's quite good that the teacher is a proven social worker, so he can really make the transfer and they can really be very close to its students. And on the other hand, we have the immersive game worlds. When we're talking about problem-based learning, well, that's clear. We have the challenges in the game, and we have the transfer superpower from the teacher. So again, point for both. When it comes to social learning, yes, I guess games are 100% fun, and social learning also needs rules so that everybody can interact. So we have on the other hand the teacher being the rule keeper. And if it comes to situated learning, which means really real life situation learning, well, we have the teacher who is 100% human, and we have the rewarding system of the games. So I think, hard to say, 88%, I'm not sure about that. Maybe considering the superpowers of both, it's 50-50. I'm not so sure, but I guess I'm sure about one thing, that there are more common ground than differences between these two. And maybe we can change the question at that point just to look in the other direction and see what might happen if they team up, teacher and game. Yeah, when teaming up, first question is, but how? Well, digital game-based learning, I think many might think that is about putting a game into your class and having it played. And that is okay, that is fine, but it's not the only way to get digital game-based learning into your class and to get teacher and game teaming up. So I guess the simplest way to do so would be ask and listen. So what I've done with my students was just getting to talk with them. What games are you actually playing at the moment, and what gets you hooked, and who's hooked too, and do you play together? So really, I see the shining in their eyes just talking about the game without playing it in my class. And the other way would be showing and watching. So sometimes I have only 2 or 3 persons in my class really playing the game, and we watch and we discuss what is the decision taken and what will the decision have as consequences. Third point would be really play it with your students in the class. Fourth point would be creating games, so using Scratch, using RPG Maker, using whatever system you like to really create games, to understand what is behind, to really understand the game mechanics that is behind the games. And reflecting, well, that's maybe the most difficult part of that. That would mean that you're really looking at games more in detail and getting the mechanics and making them transferred, or getting them transferred into your course design. And that might be digital or non-digital. I know a Latin prof from Luxembourg who has made her course design very gamey without using any digital game, but with having really a level system like vocabulary beginner to vocabulary master, and that would be an example of reflecting games. So we really have many opportunities to get that digital game-based learning in our class. And that will have consequences. Combining teacher and games in class has consequences on both. So it means a shift in the role of the teacher. So he's really normally in a normal class, very traditional view, the sage on stage. And then he steps from that to the guide on the side, because it's the game which is in the focus and which gets all the attention. And he's rather on the side, trying to explain, trying to help on demand, trying to get a conversation done about what is happening, trying to get the emotions expressed, and trying to make the point in what is being learned. And it means also a shift in the meaning of the game, from entertainment purposes to edutainment. That is not bad, but a good colleague of mine always says we don't have to abuse the game. A game is always a voluntary activity. It's about having fun, and we shouldn't destroy that by having games in our class and just discussing them to death. It's really, the game is a game, and me being a teacher, it's a role to get the learning made clear and made visible to everybody. Yeah, so we ended up in maybe considering teacher plus game, but is that really game changing? We have made a short explorative study on that last year in Luxembourg to really get more into detail about the parameters and the process of digital game-based learning. And we looked up in different input variables and process variables, and we considered also the output. And what we found concerning game and teacher and their position in that whole, that there is really a powerful alliance with impact on learning. Games are a very powerful tool when it comes to learning, teaming up with the teacher. So concerning games, we found in our study, which was made out of 13 classroom projects and about 135 students participating in that, we found that game and the good choice of the game really matters and has an impact on the learning outcome. So we had serious games, commercial off-the-shelf games, commercial off-the-shelf games with educational mods, and gamifications in our study. And what we found was really that serious games and a combination of serious games and commercial off-the-shelf games was really most effective when it comes to learning outcome. And concerning the teacher's role, we found that the duration of the game session, so the game is played or is being discussed for 1 hour, for 2 hours, for 3 hours, for 4 hours during a project of five weeks, that really makes a difference on the learning outcome. And one has to be very careful when it comes to learning objectives, to the topic that has to be discussed, when choosing really the right duration of the gaming, the playing session. And also for the teacher, it is clear that he has the main role of transferring from game to reality or to the topic dealt with. That was really crucial to the learning outcome. When there was a teacher who really did that transfer and took the time to do so, we had really an increase in learning outcome. And if not, pupils weren't aware that they really learned something. So We started with a question, then we should come back with a question. Who is the real game changer? So let's see that through. We had started off with the common ground for teachers and for games. We stated that they have a lot in common, so maybe a point for both of them, for the game and for the teacher. Secondly, we looked at the special features of teachers and games, and we found, okay, they have both superpowers concerning learning. So there's a point for both of them. And last but not least, we looked at the study and at literature, and we found that games matter, but the teacher being the game master in class, maybe he's one step ahead of the game. My personal opinion, we can discuss that later on. So what I suppose to be a good formula is a good teacher and a good game. That is really a game changer. And let me just end with a personal remark. It's not about the tool. It's not about games being a tool. It's about the way we use it. So digital game-based learning is not a replacement for any existing effective pedagogy. So please do not change. If it's a good team, if you're fine, please don't change. And please don't start off with the question, is there a game for my subject? It's not bad. I heard that quite often, but normally we start off with having a problem and not being able to solve that with other materials we have. So then at the point we start thinking about games. So digital game-based learning means really the teaming up of teacher and games. And it's about being on eye level teacher, game, student. And everybody who's ever did a quiz or a game in his class, you really see the shining in their eyes, and it's really worth a try. And digital game-based learning is all about having that hard fun, the fun from the game and the hard learning in place. So thank you very much for your patience and for having me here. And if you want to discuss that further on, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I'm fine to answer your questions and to discuss with you now.
Thank you, Daniela, so much for your presentation. And now, are there any questions for Daniela? There's this one comment that at the high school level, play with the course is very difficult. So do you think it depends on the age of the students, or can all students benefit from this?
Yes, in fact, that was
Yeah.
one of my private motivations to get into that topic, because me being a secondary school teacher, it's very hard. I completely agree with your remark. It's hard to get that done in your class because you have your program, you have your curriculum to fulfill, and you feel like really stressed, and then you go on topping games on that. But what we see is really that it's worth it, and it's taking time like any other new material you're offering in your class. But once you have that shining in their eyes and you have your course prepared to consider games in that, it's really worth it. In primary school, I have the impression it's less weird or less difficult. Playful learning is in their habit. They do so all the time, so they're not afraid of digital games. And in high school and secondary education, it's hard, but it's as rewarding as in the primary school, I guess.
Okay, thanks. Any questions in the chat? Meanwhile, yeah, just I have one more question, because we talk about this teacher perspective, but I have maybe another question about from the student's perspective. In your experience, is it difficult to convince students about games, or are they very excited about it?
In fact, they're on short term, they're quite excited and they love it and they want to do it again. But I have also talked to other teachers having done that several times for years now, and we really see also the motivation decrease in students. Okay, again, a game. So it's really this effect of being new, and wow, we are allowed to do that in class, which really makes the first impression on the students. But later on, I guess, like with any other tool I know, the motivation might decrease and might be less wow than when you start off with that.
Okay, thanks a lot. So let's wait. Any last questions? Because then we move on to the next presentation from Annamaria. She's also a teacher, so she will provide more from the classroom perspective as well to these questions. So, but we come back to you at the end of the webinar if there are any questions. Okay, here's one before we go. Shall a teacher give a mark to student participating in the game?
So you mean a mark for just the fact of participating or of doing a good job in the game?
Yeah, an assessment.
Okay, that's quite a good topic. So self-assessment in games, so really having game performances, choices you make, getting the time tracked it takes you to make a decision. That is, or that might be, I guess in the future, a thing to put a mark on it. Me personally, I don't get marks on playing a game. I get marks on discussing it, on presenting a character which is in the game. But me, I've never put a mark on playing the game. But I know that there is research in this field, and every teacher wants to track the gamers or the students' activities, and there's a huge hype on that. And I'm absolutely aware, and I'm very curious to see if this will happen in the near future in our classrooms. But until now, to my personal knowledge, it's not very common.
Okay, thanks a lot. We can also come back to this topic later, but let's say now we move on to Annamaria's presentation. Annamaria, do you hear us? Hello, Annamaria, we cannot hear you yet, so maybe if you unmute.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes. Also, can you? Okay? Yeah, and you can
Okay.
also turn your webcam on. Yes.
Everything okay?
Yes. Can you turn on your camera as well?
I think it's on.
You need to click one more time.
Okay. Sorry.
Perfect. Okay.
So hello, everybody. I'm Annamaria Lisotti from Italy. Just to set the stage, I teach in a high school with a science focus. Students are 14, 18 years old, and I'm a teacher of math and physics. However, I think that in my presentation, I will not really go too much in details related to my subjects, but I would like to comment on some common lines. My experience and my school experience in the last years have been about piloting some serious games. One is here. This one is Trisium Variant Limits. It was a pilot project led by European Schoolnet together with Trisium to test how it could be used and the efficacy of this serious game on math about continuity limits. It was about calculus, maybe not calculations, but about some qualitative aspects. And then we were offered, because the more you eat, they say, the more you would eat. And at first we were a bit, when we started piloting variant limits, we were a bit perplexed. And then we saw very positive points. And when we were offered by the astronomy university, the astronomy department, to work with Kerbal Space Edu, which is the educational version of Kerbal Space, which is a wide-known off-the-shelf game. We tried this as well. And this is about space flights. So you have a lot of physics, everything you can think of about energy, orbits, momentum, and so on is there. And you can, of course, work at different levels. And then we had also the possibility to work with different tools, which is not really a game. There are also some made games in this. This is beckoning, and it was made by Hort Paris, and it's more an application which helps you in making gamified learning, because you can really build your own path with the quizzes, with the, the questions. So it's really more open than the other ones. Of course, it's different, and it can be used in every subject. Before these experiences, we had been trying to go with the gamification wave, in the sense that we used Kahoot a lot, but I won't talk about this because most of you said they are using it. We had some physics apps. I will show you some. We always offered our students to participate in tournaments and challenges of different importance and size. And we have a special program about amusement park, and which is not about online games, but you will get the point in a moment. Now, before I go on talking about my experience, I would like to stress one point which I think has already come out during the previous presentation and with your questions. I think that particularly at high school, maybe not so much in middle and primary school, and of course I'm talking of Italy. So I think the context is a bit different in the different countries. I think at high school, it's not yet clear or totally accepted and shared what is the idea, whether learning is or is supposed to be with fun, if possible, of course, or if in a kind of way learning is versus fun, in the sense that, as you have stated, curriculum above all in secondary school. The idea of most colleagues is that you have to have no-nonsense lessons, and the not stated, but the behind the words, I think, behind the thoughts, idea is that students are no more kids. And so there is some doubts about whether they should be, let's say, allowed to have fun in learning. Okay, this is a bit extreme. But what strikes me every time when I'm talking with some other teachers, not all, of course, is that on one side there is what is considered pedagogically good, which means that if you are enjoying what you are doing, you are supposed to do this better. And the idea that, of course, there must be a sort of limit to the entertainment. And so what I'm asking you is, just before we proceed, to answer two polls. The first one is how you would like to learn. So please just choose some, let's say, the 3 best adjectives for your ideal learning experience. And the second poll is about which adjectives would you use to describe your ordinary lesson?
Sorry, I hope you can, sorry, hope you can see. I'm just gonna share my screen for the Menti. So here, if you can just go to menti.com, I hope you can see it. Yes, you can see. Yeah, so I'm just gonna put it here in the menti.com, and then you see the code 60439. I hope it's working for all of you.
Of course, I don't think that probably people who are watching this webinar are really the average audience, because I read that most of you are, for instance, doing the academy, Teachers Academy Games course.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I see the answers are coming in, so... Oh, it's quite nice.
Yes,
So,
with the wolf movie.
with the ball, okay. Yeah, so we'll see. So most people, they want to be exciting, engaging, creative, challenging. Nobody wants to be boring or passive. So for their ideal learning environment.
Okay, so mostly engaging, exciting. Okay, I think that this is yeah, what we expect. And then the second question is, considering all the challenges of teaching, and what you can really do in spite maybe of your many efforts, what would you use not to describe your perfect lesson, but your average lesson? Trying, of course, to see it from the learner's perspective.
So let's give it a... write it in the chat in case you cannot see it. But here you see the questions and the different answers. And how would you rate your own lessons according to being? And here's sometimes repetitive. Yeah. You can put that into the Menti. I think it takes a short moment to update the results. There we go. So here, mostly active, engaging, creative, challenging, creative, repetitive.
Yeah, and I think just commenting as they are coming in, I think that you are very honest in the sense that I'm sure most of them are active, they are creative, they are engaging, but maybe a bit less are exciting as you would expect your experience to be. And I think you are honest because sometimes they are also repetitive. Sometimes you need this. Also because in normal lessons you have all your audience, the whole class, and one of the points of gaming is also the personalized learning, I think, and we will delve deeper in this. So it's not, of course, the answer, but it can be a partial answer, a tool to make the two poles, let's say, more matching. Okay.
Okay, so I think we can go back to the slides. Thank you for everyone for participating.
But yes, I think there is, in any case, there is a kind of opposition sometimes. And okay, talking about fun, because I think it's one of the main points about the use of games. One of the things we have been doing in our school for many years, even before approaching the serious games, was the amusement park physics, which is something started originally in USA, and now, for instance, in Italy, there is one of the parks which is doing this regularly, and we don't miss one here, and it's one of the favorite activities of the students, and it's a real paradise for physics because, of course, there is a lot of fun, but it's okay. You can experience things that you can't not experience anywhere else in Earth. I'm talking, for instance, of being shot up or down the towers at the 3Gs or so on. So it's, I think you can really say it's immersive and kinesthetic. And these are characteristics which are also of online games. Of course, there is a smaller version, which is the playground physics. And here again, I have put some applet you can use with your smartphone. Of course, this is a smaller scale. And what's it's interesting is that for all these activities, both the amusement park and the playground physics, you can find a lot of resources to give you inspiration about how to use them. And the resources will be one of the other key points we will be talking about with games. Okay, some very quick idea about another ingredient of, I think, gaming is giving the appropriate level of challenge. Daniela already talked about this, to every student, which means not too easy, but not even too difficult, in order not to frustrate them. But challenge is something that usually students really are looking for. And of course, the challenge needs to have a meaningful goal. Problem is what is meaningful for a teacher and what is meaningful for the student. Just to show a few three examples, we have all the Olympics, which are of course very high level, but also active labs. For instance, we have every year, not this spring, unfortunately, because it's raining, but usually we have a lot of sun, and so there is the challenge about solar ovens. At the beginning, we are offering the challenge about how okay, which was the most efficient one, but then we sort of turned it around, like making a story around it, and the students were even more engaged. The idea was that they were in a disaster site, and they had to pasteurize water, and they had to build their oven and test whether it was able to keep the temperature for a certain amount of time. Because pasteurized water could be critical in some conditions. And when they are working about this, they learn about heat transfer, about energy power, about renewable energy. And again, a lot of a lot of content knowledge is in, for instance, contests like the Solar Mobile, which was born in Germany, and now there is also in Italy. Our school is organizing this. It's now in the 3rd edition. And the students have to design and build car models, solar cars. And about content, there is a lot of physics really. They have to know about circuits, kinematics, aerodynamics, friction, power and energy. And also they have to develop soft skills like problem solving, teamwork, and most important, I think, documenting and presenting their own work. And of course, we have a lot of, we are used to a lot of scavenger hunts with QR codes. I saw that you talked about this as well. So challenging, a goal, engagement are really important ingredients of games. The question now is, of course, if you are going online, if you are talking about serious games online, what's the added value if compared to other experiences and activities I just described? I think they are, first of all, one more tool offered to teachers to differentiate and personalize learning. I mean, we have whole classes to manage usually, and it's really difficult to consider the needs of each of them, even if we always struggle for this. And when I'm talking about differentiation and personalized learning, I'm talking both of different learning styles. So this is another tool. Not all students, most students like games, not all of them. So you can hook a larger audience with games. And it's also very good for different skill levels because each student is going at its own space. Usually what we are doing is after the first sessions to have students work at home, and then we discuss in the class because there are time constraints and it's much easier and more efficacious this way. And one thing that this kind of games definitely have is the graphics, which is a professional graphics, and it's really immersive. It makes the experience great and also from an emotional point of view for the students. Some say that this kind of game is addictive. I think that actually it's more rather than addictive, is stretching the concentration lapse time of the students. That's true, because usually it's very short, and when they are playing games, but actually also when they are doing other kind of challenges, they are much more concentrated. Not all pupils love challenges, because there are shy ones who maybe don't really like this kind of approach, but most of them accept to do this if they are challenged by a game, if they are not challenged by other school fellows or teachers. So it's easier, let's say, to work with a computer which is not really judging you. And I think again that this kind of games is offering experiences that you wouldn't be able to live in other ways. For instance, being in the space and trying to drive the capsule and so on. One thing that sells games, at least those we have used, and I think it's really very important for education, one of their main characteristics is the feedback. The students get continuous feedback. It's really very scaffolded, which is not what we are always succeeding in doing in our lessons, even if we are trying. So students are guided from one point to the other, and also feedback for teachers, because they are able to monitor the progress of the students with analytics, not just to control them, but to know where they have, for instance, to give support. And this was a characteristic that both variant limits and beckoning offered, and this was very important for us. And I think this is also helping in evaluation, which is not always becoming a mark, but still the teacher can see what's happening in each student, let's say, history in the game. And I think that as a science teacher, I think they are also a good alternative to labs, because they offer safe environments. For instance, one of the games that we use a lot is this one on the smartphone. It's the laser maze. So students have to position mirrors and they use lasers, but of course it's safe. Plus, we wouldn't have enough equipment to distribute to students and give them at home to work, while they can do this with the app. And they are also free to explore. They have time to explore on their own. This is important, I think. And then, of course, you have to upgrade. You have to give them specific tasks, because you need to delve deeper. They have to explain what they are doing, what's happening. They have to elaborate. For example, we usually start with this app. So they work about reflection, and then they go to refraction with this Fat Colorado simulation, and it's a bit more difficult. Okay, about safe environment, you can think of a lot of chemistry experiments. There are games about this, electrical engineering, or simulating a nuclear power plant. Of course, you wouldn't do this in real life. And I think also, okay, I don't think I have time, so maybe I will just, you have the links there. I think that it's also, we were talking about immersion and the fact that you are experiencing things that you wouldn't experience in other ways. So I liked a lot of the slogan, "Play it before you leave it," which was the slogan of Word Without Oil, a game which I don't think is still running, but in the past, the participants were had to play, but also had to take action outside in their own community. And they had to describe how they were coping with this oil crisis. Of course, it was a simulation. But simulation and modeling are part of science. Researchers are constantly using simulations. And these are all examples. And I think that it's true when they say that humans tend to forget information that they have received if it's not in a meaningful context, particularly if they are not able to imagine this context. And Future Delta 2 is about climate change. and it's a sort of time machine which is bringing you back from the future, which is situated in 2100, and you are back to our time approximately, and you can change your choices, and in this way to remediate a future which is a future disrupted by climate change, with refugees crisis and all the related issues. And about refugee crisis, I think it's great, this game at citizenschool.eu. And it's a very simple game, so it's also, I think, teaching us how we could organize games, because the game in itself is made of questions online. You can reach them with a QR code, but before you play the game, you have to let the students watch some videos which provide the immersive experience that you have inside some of the, let's say, industrial or commercial games. And I really recommend you to have a look at it, because it's always played on surprise, and which are, again, ingredients of games. And just tips for teacher beginners is, first of all, familiarize yourself with the game first, and remember that difficulties for teachers usually are different from difficulties for students. Students are more challenged by content and teacher by technicalities, at least if you are not a gamer. I was not myself. And most important, to have a post-game plan, and sometimes also a pre-one too, because if you don't want the playing of games to be a trial and error clicking, and that's it, but you want it to be a real learning, you need to use the game as a starter, as a catalyst, but then you have to help students link what they have learned in the game to the curricula. And you can do this in many ways. We already talked about having flipped classroom, playing at home, and then classroom talks. You can ask them to write assignments, to fill in sheets, or you can provide more resources or exercises. I don't think this is really making the game less enjoyable, but it's definitely making it more significant. It's not less enjoyable because they are still two, let's say, parallel tracks. If possible, use the analytics to track the students' progress, or maybe, of course, you don't need to do this for each student. And some games offer free downloadable curricula or discussion guides, or you may create your own, maybe with the help of students. And just about this, for instance, Variant Limits had resources and scenarios from European Schoolnet. They were made by the pilot project teachers. Kerbal has a wiki space, and Angry Birds, which was famous for the physics of Angry Birds. If you are on a projectile motion and so on, this is really great. Has a lot of materials online. So my suggestion is look for this support and try to create your own. And okay, another thing, we already talking about how you can use these games. I would suggest in systems like Kahoot and Beckoning to have also students work as authors, make their own games, which is good both for knowing the mechanism of games, but also for managing knowledge. And I would suggest to work with other teachers and make interdisciplinary activities. I will just stop with a list of pros. We already talked about all this. And there are some cons. As I said, that there are some people who say that these games, online games, are that addictive. They are brainwashing. It would be much better to do experiences which are not online. Actually, I would say that I have seen also some traditional lessons which are really brainwashing, because if you are not making active ones, I really think that they are not really stimulating. They couldn't be much less stimulating than an online game. They can be, of course, time-consuming at the beginning, but this is, I think, typical of all innovation. ICT and all digital innovations are very good, but usually you see the benefits as you are using them. The first time it can take time to learn, to prepare the activities, because you need accurate planning to prepare the resources. And last but not least, it is not really cons, but it's my personal opinion. They are just a tool, a great tool to which the students are used. So it's an opportunity to use them, but I wouldn't overestimate them. I mean, they are still just one tool. That's it.
Thank you, Annamaria, a lot for your presentation. Yeah, we'll go back to the last slide later. Any questions at the moment to Annamaria? There were a lot of nice comments going on and discussion in the chat box about also, it was quite interesting to see the role of students and what if students don't like the games, how you can address that. And other discussions on relating to the Mentimeter we did earlier, and how Hannah mentioned it's okay to be repetitive as well. And yeah, so thanks everyone for participating, especially in the Mentimeter. And now, any questions for Annamaria or Daniela? Or if any of the speakers, are there any topics you would like to address that you saw in the comments as well? And also there was quite, yeah, yes, you can type, we have time. There was also some comments going around in schools. So sometimes teachers want to introduce games, but then the schools are maybe not so supportive or flexible on that. Do you have any experience on that, Annamaria?
You mean supportive about buying them or
integrating, or
using
like if the schools are not flexible?
I think that schools need to test them, because there is, at least in my surroundings, there was a bit of, let's say, suspicion, because of course there is again the idea, but are they just playing? I think that this is why it's really important to try and have best practices and to spread them. But yes, there is. I would say that, for instance, families were quite satisfied, because some parents said, okay, they are playing all the time at home. Other games, I would rather have them playing some educational games. So I don't think that the brainwashing or addictive idea is coming from families. And from teachers, I would say that you need time, as you needed time in the past, as you are still needing time, for instance, about the use of smartphones in schools, which there is a big debate about this. But personally, I think it's really a mobile lab that they are bringing with them. So I think that the right thing is to show them that they can use it for great things, and to educate them in using it. I'm talking of smartphones, but I'm talking also of games. I think it's the same. You need time, and you need good practice examples.
Okay, thanks. And there's a question from Hannah, that's sort of the same lines, that who is the best person to start the change in schools? Is it the experts or survey some parents?
I would say teachers, because you need experts, because teachers need the input at the beginning. But then in the end, it depends how much convinced is the teacher. If the teacher is proposing something and is not convinced, it will not be working.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, teachers are saying here they need time and patience. And from Grammati, do you do the games by yourselves or do you buy them?
Sorry?
There's one question is, do you do the games by yourselves or do you buy them? So
no, we were the two, let's say, commercial ones, the big ones, where we were able to use variant limits, because we are a pilot school, and now I think we will buy it most probably. Kerbal, again, as we were piloting, was offered to us, but I think it's a great tool as well, and it's not very expensive. something like 20 euros or similar, and then you can reuse it more and more times. For the other ones, you can find a lot of free ones, and you can make personalized small ones with beckoning, with Kahoot, and other physics applications. And I'm not really doing them. Okay, sometimes I do, but most of the time are students or group of students who are doing this as a part of revising task and so on.
Okay, thank you. Meanwhile, Daniela, do you have any comments that you want to address?
Yes,
That maybe something for Annamaria or earlier discussions we had.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Maybe just one point about the parents. I don't think they should really be the starting point of that change in schools, but we definitely have to consider them. So we normally, when we do a project in our school for the first time with games, we inform the parents of the class about what we are doing, because teacher and directors, at least in Luxembourg, being very afraid of the negative image of digital games. And so we pre-inform the parents of the class what will happen in the class and why we think it is a good solution to do so. So that about the parents' role, and about the buying or the not buying of the games. So we have both. We have schools buying games, and it's normally the initiative of the teachers really saying, okay, I can do this and that, which I can't do without the game. So we really have to invest. And if the school is really reluctant to do so, we also had some project with the pupils buying the game, because otherwise they would have bought the lecture. And so we had a lecture replaced in a German course by playing another Lost Phone, which is a text-based adventure game. And so there was no problem for that. But we have both aspects.
Okay, thanks a lot. So maybe some final comments and questions before we close the session. So just a second, let me get back to the comments. Hannah had the same with using theater techniques like role play. Students loved it, but thought it was not real learning, and that it was just maybe something not permanent, and they would go back to normal for preparing for exams. So they don't really see it as a part of learning. It's something maybe a little bit different and extra.
It definitely is, but as I've already mentioned before, I think it's quite difficult, or it's quite a problem, because normally in the kindergarten or in primary school we think that learning and playing, they go together. It's a perfect match, and the little kids, they learn a lot by just playing around, and we're all very satisfied with them having games and playing all the time. And then at a certain age, maybe at the age of 8 or 9, when they enter secondary school, it's just like a complete cut off, and games are no more useful for learning, and that is quite not understandable to me. And so we are trying hard in the ministry, and me being a teacher, to get that normal, to have that normality of playing and learning, and of both going together. But it is not by now. I would guess so.
Yeah. And nice, I really agree with Hannah here when you say that the students, they didn't realize that they were learning. So it was, how would I say, it was embedded so well. So they were still having fun at the same time they were learning. So maybe that's also a good approach, just to make it so embedded. So you don't think about it as, okay, now we're playing, but more like as a part of learning. The last slide. I think this is the last slide of Annamaria's presentation. I think it's already 6 o'clock, maybe some final questions. Meanwhile, I'll put here for the feedback survey, if you click there and you can answer some questions. And for certificates, you can submit your details from the following link, and please make sure you have your same email as you have for Teacher Academy, so you'll be able to download your certificate for this webinar. And I would like to say a big thank you to both Daniela and Annamaria for taking their time and coming to present during this webinar. And any final questions or comments. I think we had quite a lot of discussion going on in the chat box, and there was so many comments. I was happy to read all of them. So thank you everyone who shared their opinions, their experiences. It was very valuable to see that how this topic is regarded in different schools and different countries and on the teacher level. So many thanks for everyone who have joined and shared. And yes, I also agree with Dimitras. It was very inspiring and interesting topic. And if you're more interested in games, there's currently Teacher Academy course on games still going on. So if you haven't joined yet, you still have time. So you can, on Teacher Academy, you can find the course there and join it. You still have time to participate and complete the activities and to learn more, of course.